Greetings. This is Aldo Lauria Santiago. This is one of a series of videos on research flow for historians. This is a more specific uh, product that will be covered in this video. The topic is desktop searching with Copernic, and it's relatively unscripted, in part because I want to demonstrate sort of how open-ended flow in addition to very targeted searching. So I don't have a really detailed script. I use this tool very frequently, and I should be able to demonstrate some of the uses. And this is the the breakdown. What is desktop searching? Copernic itself, the setup and the searching, and then the alternatives. So fairly straightforward in that sense. And let's go right into it. What is desktop searching? Desktop searching is any function that allows you to find files, right, on your computer. So the most primitive is Windows itself, that has a search function here within the file manager. And there is a little bit of tweaking that can be done for the file manager as to what's indexed and what is whether it's file names that are searched or content itself. But it's very primitive and very hidden. But you can do it if you want to just set it to search file names, that kind of thing. And you can also search by dates and exclude and include file attributes like PDFs or partial words. So it's powerful because in part it's built into Windows and it indexes everything by default, right? And not your system files, but your data files. But for historians, this is simple and basic and not ideal, right? This is the commercial site, and you can buy the basic software subscription, and then you can keep adding components based on your needs. And I'm not going to get much into those additional components because I only use one of them, but it allows you to index cloud folders, and other options that are more business related. But basically, it's software to search for your in your computer, right? So Copernic works to help you find not just files, but what's really more important is the content of specific files. And this only really is helpful once you have a complex structure of files and notes. In other words, sources of varied types and notes. And the interface looks a little bit like the more sophisticated search engines or search boxes for let's say a WorldCat or a fancy database, right? Except that you're searching your own materials, right? So the setup includes telling the software how to index with what speed, and I have it on unrestricted so that it can be doing indexing while I am doing something else, because I have a very fast computer and because I want any changes in my files to be updated in the index immediately, right? You can manually tell it to update the index, and which part of the index you want updated, right? And in the options menu, you get to pick which folders you want indexed, which is really, really important. I don't index my emails. can see here that it's not selected. Outlook, right? Not selected. And files, I tell it very specifically which folders to index, because I don't want my whole computer indexed. This is for me, is for research purposes, and I have my research folders and a folder that's digital library where I include all the PDFs that I use for teaching and etc., which are not specifically connected to a research project. So, and you can also tell it to not index certain kinds of files, right? Although in my case, I have indexing images, videos. You can see here the categories, right? And text files, or text related files like PDFs, right? And you have other options. One of the options that you can purchase is image text recognition, which I'll explain what that is in a different video. I don't use it because I do a separate OCR flow, but if you watch that other video, this connects to the OCR, and it does it natively, right? And you pay a little extra for it, but for me, it's not particularly useful because I already have a setup for OCR. So indexing and performance, advanced. So you have some, some control over what the software is set up to do. So here you'll notice that you have a search box at the top, and then you have limiters. And these limiters are very, very powerful, right? And when you're doing a very specific search for a specific item that you know exists somewhere, it's easy to do with a box, right? You can limit in certain ways. If you know that you have a file of notes with a newspaper title or something like that, you can just put in the title, the word, and the title of the file right there, and see if it shows up, right? But when you're doing more open-ended searches for things that you don't know what they are or where they are, right? You expect to find dozens or hundreds of references in your notes. Then these categories are very, very useful because it allows you to prejudge what it is you're looking for and what it is you expect to find. So if you know you're looking for in my case, I typically see it's already entered here, notes, right? I pre name all my notes files with the words notes, right? And that's on purpose, right? And that's part of the workflow discussion that I did in the longer video of preparing files for searching. Well, this is the result of that, right? Or I could do author, right? Or I can do, if I remove notes, I can file name, right? Same thing. If I want to do only PDFs, I can do file type, PDF, right? If I remember that the files I'm looking at or want to look at are large, well, then you select large, right? So these are small things, but the big one for me is to restrict to what is a research domain, which is New York City, right? So if I want to run searches only in my materials on New York City, I specify this folder here. So you have ways of limiting the search or defining the search, right? And then you actually have what you search for. And this can be straight up text or phrases. I'll give you an example of, I'll use a phrase, minimum wage, right? And I want my notes. So here I looked for, in my New York City projects, any file that has the word notes. I could put it here, notes as well. And I'm searching for minimum wage. And these are the files that have that phrase in quotes, right? That's a Boolean operator. Um, so as a phrase, it appears in these places. Now, then the way this is all very flexible, so includes many different options for viewing, but the way I have it set up is I can see the file name, and then in the right hand side the file opens and it has highlighted the phrase where it appears. It shows me here, let's see if you can see this a little better, where it shows with those markers highlighted in orange. And I can do a search here to go to the specific references. And if I wanted to change it and search for anything else within that file, I can change that here, right? So there's a lot of considerations here, that because once you get into the viewing stage, you can do your separate search within that file. You can open the file to look at it separately as a Word file, but here at least you have a fancy viewer. I think you could even do cut and paste from this viewer, and you can scroll through the whole document, right? Now, when you have a PDF file, this will only work if I were to exclude notes, because by definition notes are Word files for me. But notice that entry in the middle, which is a PDF file, right? For some reason that PDF has, because it says endnotes in the title. That's funny, right? So there's two things that made this PDF, three things that made this PDF show up. That I searched for notes in the name of the file, right? And oops, there's one that is not a Word file. Then that it is OCR'd. So the text within the PDF is searchable, right? Or either because it came that way or because I OCR'd it. I'll explain that in a separate video, but basically it means you create a searchable text, right? So this found the minimum wage is on page, whatever page this is, of that text in a PDF format, which I can do the same operation, right? It's only one reference, I think. Maybe there's others. No, there's others. No, it's the same. It's only one, and that's why it doesn't show on a bar on the right. And notice that the color's different. That's interesting. And I can manipulate the PDF. I can have the pages here and the scale and the full page and move pages and so forth, right? So, but what I really want to focus on is the power of this tool is how it allows us to search for more than just kind of linear searches where, simple search is show me the files that have the word whatever, minimum, right? But actually, when you're doing research and writing especially, you want to find intersections of things, right? So minimum wage and New York is a different kind of search, right? And you can limit this. You can do Boolean operators here, for example, to exclude New York, which is going to be very little because New York is mentioned in pretty much every file that I have. And apparently in one file, the word New York is not mentioned in English, mind you, because I work with bilingual materials and I myself take notes in Spanish and in English. So sometimes I have to be careful. I try to keep my own notes in English, but sometimes I take notes in Spanish. And I have to remember to, when I did the minimum wage search, for example, let me correct this. Minimum wage, and if I wanted to do this correctly, or salario mínimo, which might add some items or maybe not. It depends on how I structured my notes, right? So if I wanted to keep looking, I could delimit the searching by notes that I took or files that were created after a certain date, right? Or just remove, for example, the reference to notes here and just include all my PDFs. And that's really powerful because at that point now you're going through all kinds of PDFs that you've gathered. As long as they are OCR'd, this program indexes the content of the PDF, right? And then you start um, uh, kind of heating up against the problems when you kind of open up a search funnel very large to a very large size, that now it's a lot of stuff, right? And then how do you restrict to something narrower that might be more useful to you, right? Because now you have a full text search within text, the gazillions of pages of text within your PDFs, right? So in this case, you can, restrict the search with more precise terms, phrases, which are usually very helpful, or you can do a proximity search. And this is an interesting, powerful piece that the software has. That, let's see, that you could, I don't know, let me, Colon near Vega, or let's just say Bernardo, which is his first name. So here I'd be looking for any reference to Colon near Bernardo. And I'm not sure how well the proximity works, but in my notes and in these PDFs, the word Colon shows near the word Bernardo. And in other words, these are two characters in my story that intersect very frequently. And maybe I want to look up to see exactly what references I have that intersect these two names, or variations of their names. Now, I don't know if the proximity search works with a phrase. That might be asking too much. Apparently it does, right? So I pushing the envelope here, and this is a compounded proximity search. Jesus Colon near Bernardo Vega. Apparently it works, and I'd have to be convinced of that by looking at the results, right? But you can see how, Bernardo by itself would work because there's not too many Bernardos in my notes, and Jesus would probably work as well because there's not a lot of Jesuses. So, so this is where it really matters for you to know how you enter your notes, and also that you don't create too many typos in your notes. So one of the things that I do in my downtime is go through my really important note files very quickly, automatically, Word files, and try to find typos and do a kind of a change all if I find a very common typo, and just fix them all at once, especially for specific names. Now, Copernic sometimes, and I'm not sure if I have it set this way, it'll do, it'll start searching as soon as you, as soon as you, yeah, as soon as you start, yeah, it starts searching as soon as you type, right? And the other thing is you can also do truncations. And truncation means sort of like Bernard Star, right? And Bernardo, Bernarda, Bernadette will show up in this search, right? Um, and again, this is the kind of thing that makes this sort of thing very powerful, right? Now, if you recall in the other video for EndNote, I described how I use 3 stars in my notes to to denote specific passages of notes that are going to be really important. As I'm taking notes, I like put in 3 stars because I want to find those later. But in the world of index searching, 3 stars is nothing. It's 3 empty characters. It's not searchable. And um, let me see if they fix that. But um, and I'll do actually a note search. But I'm pretty sure it doesn't work. And I found a way around this, and I don't remember what it is. So there's some customizability to the searching, but um, I think it might be that I did it within File Manager, right, and not Copernic. So Copernic has limitations when it comes to common the items that are not indexed, and star is not indexed, right, because it's actually an instruction, right. So I could search for PDF files that have a specific truncated name in them, let's see, what would be an appropriate, and also if you think that there's variations, and you want to include them all, right? Or like indigena, indigenous. Of course, it's not a term that appears often in my PDFs or notes, but there it is, right? If I had restricted this to notes, I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't show anywhere. Indigena. Well, interesting. Okay, so by the way, notice here that the way I have this set up, my chapter drafts themselves are indexed, and that can be an issue where I'm searching for results in the wrong place. So I could exclude it. I could set up the folders to not include my writing folders and to just include the data folders. So if I go here, system folder, New York, I could just exclude the the um, the writing folders, but not sure. Sometimes it's useful to know that something that I think I didn't write about, I actually wrote about because it shows up in my notes. And again, the point up here is the search box and how it can relate to your very specific searching needs, right? Um, and by the way, you can save. There's these automated searches already built in, which gives you an idea of the kind of searches you can make. Or you can save if you do a fancy search that you're going to do again and again and again. Something and truncated something and a not something, or something that you think you're going to want to go to again. Basically, you just add it to my searches, right? And then here's a reset button. And then there's a history button where you can go back to the recent searches that you've done, right? See how it's toggling through them. So, this is, and it's important for us to think about this kind of software as kind of working at two ends, right? I implied that already. The end in which you're looking for something really specific, and you're going to be able to use these search limiters and the search box in a very targeted way. The notes on some event by some dude in a specific state. So things that are in the record or in your notes, um, you can target search. The other way, so it's very powerful that way. But the other way is also for open searches where the search itself is going to change as you see the results. So you can do a search and then say, I should tweak this, opening it up further, limiting it further, changing the language, changing the terms. Sometimes you do a search and you find one reference that leads you to a different search term that is more powerful, and you end up including it as an and construction, right? Or as an or construction in the search box. And then you revisit the results, right? And basically, the goal here is to find what's hidden within your own work, your notes, and but also within the PDFs that you have gathered and maybe not really sort of looked at carefully. Now, I want to finish with a discussion of how this relates to your own archival work, right? Because notes are text, right? And PDFs of 20th century materials can be OCR'd and become readable text, right? But a lot of what we work with are images taken from archives, sometimes, with cell phones or whatever, but they are JPEGs, and they're JPEGs that don't have text embedded in them because they're handwritten documents or other graphic material that'll never be text. So the goal when you're processing that material is to always reference in the folder name, in the names of the files, and or in the properties of the file, a named reference to something that matters to you, right? So that let's say you're looking at file types as JPEGs, right? Where is it? I don't know, because I have it limited here to text files, but see these delimiters here, which I tend to ignore because I'm dealing with text. But if you look at the right hand side, the 19,431, that's images, right? Which I've excluded, right? And images gives you a different bunch of searches based on the idea that these are photographs, that it might have different characteristics of a photo, which a digital camera will record. And this is one reason to use a real camera rather than your phone, because real cameras, both document cameras and actual digital cameras, have more fields that are automatically entered, like date, like even little GPS, the location in some cameras, and also the name of the camera itself, right? And if you want to add a record to those records in their camera that becomes part of each file, it's very easy to do, right? So the conventions for naming and structuring the data for JPEGs are different, but the question is then what is searchable, right? And what you want to do, and I'm going to click here on the all-inclusive search, right? That first icon, which I wasn't at right here, that one, is that in your folder with gazillion photos of documents, you have at least named the folder or renamed the documents, the files themselves, at the very least with a reference to time and place, origin, if not to actual data from the collection itself, whether, it has a name, it has a number, it has a, cataloging data, basically, so that later it can be searchable that way, right? Now, the additional refinement is to make those JPEGs findable, searchable. And there's two ways to do that. You can create an attribute of the JPEGs themselves at the folder level or at the file level that includes words that Jesus Colon archive, good enough, right? So you search for Jesus Colon, it's going to find you those I'll restrict it here to images. Nothing shows up. I actually don't use that method very much myself. In other words, my JPEGs and my folders are there's a folder name search that can be included here, but I'm not gonna show you that now. So that's one version. You include words within the file, properties, or the folder name. What I do is in my notes in a Word file, I actually um, create a list with the file, the image number, right? So it'll vary. I will include a range of images from this image.jpg to this image or this folder of JPEGs. They come from this place, and these are their characteristics, right? And often I produce a log when I'm doing archival work of what I looked at and how I registered photos. And then that log later becomes a searchable document where you can see that this folder in my file structure with photos, right, is the Jesus Colon collection box number 5, right? And often I include, I enter a lot of data on box and folder number within the notes, but with references to the photos and the photo folders. And that's a little bit more of a kind of interactive as you go along sort of thing. And also it helps you repair what you did not do originally when you were doing the archival research. So Copernic, and the whole point of this is that Copernic for photos should be working with a file manager that manages your graphics. And if you remember in my flow video, I mentioned these tools for file managing that includes especially for photos, right? And this is File Center. And let me see if I have it set up. I've not set it up because this is a new computer. So basically what would show here is my folders as I have created them, as I have added cabinets. And let me just do it so you can see what it looks like. So I'm adding the one of my research folders for New York. And so in the logic of this software, cabinets are one particular project, right? And each one of these holds a file structure, and you can see everything, including the PDFs and the Word files, obviously. But once you get into the archives folder, and for example, AGPR, as you can see here, my file structure denotes collection and date, right? Or collection and subcollection, right? Collection and date. And the rest of the naming is JPEGs, just a number from the camera, right? And this has a file viewer then that you can open up, and you can see what the content is, so that when you're working with Copernic, you can sort of the JPEGs that are not exactly searchable, you still can see what they are based on the references that Copernic sends you or your notes. Now, this software allows you to OCR as well. So you can see how all of these, the OCR option is really important. And it could very well be that some of these files cannot be OCR'd because they don't have any real text. They're handwritten documents. It opened in a different screen, so I'm not going to show you, but there's a preview button here. Let's see, there's the preview. See, this is a handwritten letter. There's no way the OCR would recognize it. Soon enough, AI is going to be included in these software packages so that it can read handwriting. But we're not there yet, and it's probably going to cost a lot more money. But the point is, to zoom back to Copernic, when you're dealing with JPEGs, you can do a search here that can tell you one way or another, that a graphic file exists and that it has, and that you should look at it because it coincides with what you're looking for, either because of the collection name or the date or anything else that you've entered in the record, that this folder, for example, is important, right? In my case, like I said, when I read these JPEGs, I create a note file. And the note file not only produces discussions of these notes, and sometimes even transcripts of these notes, because sometimes I just have to do that. I just transcribe and then I reflect. But it includes a clear reference to file name and folder, right? So that I can find the original. And at the same time, I don't have to go looking for JPEGs directly, right? I already incorporated in my notes a reference, and that requires that you name and subname the folders correctly in some way that makes sense, right? So that they are subsectioned rather than everything in one folder, right? I talked a lot about that in the bigger workflow video. So anyway, so indexing, very powerful. There's a lot of help for you here. And the part of the help includes how to refine searches and actually enter some commands with the @ so there's actually more powerful functions that can be addressed with the limiting searches, and if you have, I've never actually used it, but this subject reference it applies, I think, mostly to emails, because there's a subject line, right, which is a distinct field. But sometimes in PDFs and in Word files, you can tag, like in a website, like in a web page, you can tag the content in a certain way, and then that becomes searchable, right? So anyway, so Boolean operators and how they get translated in different languages, right? Depending on the language that you're working with, and all, and, not, or, near, except, which I've never used, uh, and the category terminators. These are commands that the program recognizes, and that's more working at what's called the command level. And the alternative to Copernic is X1 search. And last I checked, which was a while ago, it does the same stuff. The interface looks a little different. And I don't know how the prices compare, right? And the alternative to all of these, and I think I mentioned this in the EndNote video, is Nota Bene's Orbis. But this is not for the timid. And this is a word processing and research suite, so to speak. As you can see here, it's note-taking, referencing, and writing system. I've been using it since it was created long ago, and it's quite a powerful piece of software. But what I'll reference here now is the Orbis component, right? Orbis, this piece here, which is a text indexer, right? It's the same kind of thing, but there's two benefits to this system. Is that the searcher is integrated into the word processor. That's one thing. So this is not, you don't use Word when you're using this system as a whole. Now you can use Orbis separately as an indexer and not use the word processor that comes with this system, but the benefit is that it's integrated. However, the thing that makes Orbis really powerful is that it can do a search at the sentence or paragraph level. And what that means is that Copernic, you could do searches and it'll search a whole file, right? So if you do two words, which is, this is classic, right? Like, literally Jesus and Bernardo in my notes, right? Um, sorry, not notes, notes, right? But some of these notes are 20, 30, 40, even 500 pages long. So it doesn't really help me that no, Jesus and Bernardo show up in the file, right? Because they're not really related references. And I could use near, but that's limiting, right? And unprecise, right? But it's good to have it, right? In Orbis, when you do an and search, it you can tell it to show you when the search terms show up within the same sentence or within the same paragraph or within the same page, so that you're not hitting search results simply because the words are in this huge record but unrelated to each other, not proximate. And for people that work with ideas, this is really important because obviously, you know, you want to our ability to search for discussions is based on words, right? And how we manipulate those words brings us closer to what we might be looking for, what might be useful for us. And if you think about this as a function for your notes, it's useful. But when you have, let's say you have 500 newspapers in PDF, newspaper items in PDF that have been OCR'd, and sometimes it's the whole page of the newspaper. When you're searching, you don't want to waste your time looking for these words that appear anywhere on that page. You want results that are proximate to each other. If you're searching for compounded items. Okay, so I think that's good for today. And if you have any questions, put it in the comments. The next video will cover OCR. And which is obviously intersects with a lot of this. So my suggestion is that you download the free version, you experiment with this, and the real lesson is what this means for how you organize your notes, your file names, your file structure, how your input gets set up on your computer. Because the more you do that, the better this kind of searching and any kind of searching will be. Okay. Okay. See you next time.